The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. Today we have a very special episode in store. We're very excited to introduce you to our good friends from Syracuse, New York. But first, we're going to start with the quirky tip of the day.
Someone's going to squeak down there.
Gosh, I have the pig down here. We have 4. It's such a long set. All right, our quirky tip today is if you're thinking about doing any kind of bitey sports with your dogs, and everybody else can elaborate on this slightly if they want to as well, do not just go to anyone who wears a suit. No bite work is way better than unsafe bite work. So be very conscientious of who you're working with. Scott and Ben have both been certified decoys before in the sport. Ben still is a certified decoy. And it's important to know that, you're working with someone who can keep your dog safe and can make the sport enjoyable, because it can be very, very dangerous. So without further ado, we have Ben and Janelle Allanson here with us today. We're very excited to have them on the podcast. And we're going to talk about couples who train together in protection sports and everything else. Sweetie, how long ago was it that you and Ben met? I feel like you have quite a long-standing history.
2010.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
Ben got in touch with me and said, hey, I want to come out and work my dogs and learn about ring. And he was in New York, and he drove out to Mass, and it was a match made in heaven.
Ben is very dedicated to the sport.
I felt a kinship.
And that was after the seminar with Bob.
Oh, at Salamini.
Yeah. That's where I met you, Scott Dunmore.
Yeah, the whole thing.
That's where it all started.
Ben is like an OG. Ben has stayed at like every house Scott and I have been in together. Ben is a long-standing friend. And Janelle's been in the protection sports for almost a decade as well. And you're still competing in French ring, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And you have 2 males right now you compete with?
One, she has her French ring one, and I have a puppy that's actually going to be Ben's puppy.
Oh,
he just hasn't.
There we go. We're
owned it yet.
We're just still pushing that onto him.
And then Narco.
Yeah, well, Narco's retired. He's
and you got a rank 3 on him.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
No,
All right.
that's the Dutch Shepherd. Narco?
No, that's
Raiden.
Raiden was my first.
So you got a 2 on Raiden, right?
No, I stopped at 1. I retired him. Yeah.
So you got the 3 on the male.
Right.
All right, so let's chat this up a little bit. So you guys train together a little bit differently than we train together, because you're like actually working your own dogs. So when Scott and I were doing this together as a couple, I was working his dogs and he was decoying his dogs, so there were their own challenges there. But you're really training your own competition dogs on a certified decoy, right? Like that's kind of your setup for the most part. Did you work Ben's dogs when he was competing? Would you handle them as well? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so let's kind of hash that out a bit. How does that go? Does that get a little bit hairy? Is that a lot of fun? Is it contributing to the relationship?
If you had asked us maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the answer would be different. It's been a learning curve. But we've gotten a lot better at it.
Marital growth.
Yes. Mm-hmm. A lot of empathy, a lot of understanding. So like the difference between like Ben and I is like
Empathy. What the hell is that?
like it was like it's a hobby for me. It was.
Yeah.
And now it's evolved into like a very serious, like not just a weekend sport.
Yeah.
So like Ben is very neurotic. He's like, you have to do it this way. You have to, and then it's helped me become a better handler.
That's not the Ben I know.
Not at all, right? So like at first it was like, especially when I was handling his dogs, he would get so mad at me, and I'm like, bro.
Yeah, chill out.
Chill out. Like,
well, the thing is, before you handled his dog, he'd get mad at himself.
Yes.
Now he can just get mad at you.
Me, yeah. He can project it onto me.
Yeah.
But no, now we've kind of gotten to like a really good groove, I feel like, where I think I'm actually a better handler a little bit than Ben, I'll say it.
Just you've had more practice lately, too.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I feel like he's much more patient with me. If anything, he's just like, that was a slow to out. And I'm like, I know. Like, I'm on it,
He's evolved a little bit in his understanding.
Yeah. Well, that's like Bob Salamini with his wife. It's the same thing. She's handling most of the time. He's doing the decoy work. She's doing real well. She's done real well in the past. And it's a good setup,
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, if I wasn't with Ben or if something happened to Ben, I probably wouldn't be in ring sport anymore, just because I like the way we train, and I don't know if a lot of people like are on the same page as we are. And
most people are not on the same page with Ben.
No, so exactly.
You guys to be on the same page, that's a miracle right there.
Well, in general too, a lot of people don't train the way that we do.
Yeah.
A lot of people are still training in a very specific way where it's like, okay, I'm the handler, decoy, tell me what to do. Decoy's doing a lot of the corrections, and we don't train that way anymore. For us, it's very like the decoy is a toy, and the dog
has to respect the handler.
Yeah, it doesn't really respect the decoy,
right?
And you get so much more power from the dog. Like no respect from the decoy. He's just like he owns them.
Right.
It's the respect that then from the handler.
I'm sure that transfers better to trial than
and it becomes I think it's an easier way to train as like a team. And the handler learns just as much, like, not, I guess, as the dog, but like when you have a handler that's working with a decoy that's doing all the corrections, the handler doesn't learn as much because it's just like, oh, decoy's doing everything, where the way that we do it, the handler learns so much about the training.
Although I could see that it would take longer to get the dog trained the way you're doing it. Because a decoy can clean things up real quick as they're moving along, and training like on the fly, a good decoy can teach the dog so much in one session. You know, a smart dog.
But it's less transferable.
Yeah, and a decoy to decoy, it's harder too.
And so like he's like kind of groomed me to where like I could go out now and train with other decoys and just I run the show. It's like, okay, you're going to do X, Y, Z, and I'm just going to do the rest. And it's like, okay.
Well, then you get the egos too, where they don't want to be told what to do, and it's like, you know, you should be. I mean, that's not unusual, is it?
Okay, but it's like this is my program, you know, and like it's like you follow, like you're gonna f up my training, all the months I've put into this one thing. If you want to change it up now, so it's like no, we're gonna follow my plan, and if not, then.
Well, the nice thing is that you have a plan, and most handlers don't. You know, like that's the thing. They show up. What do I do? What do you want me to do?
What should we do today? It's like, oh my goch.
Yeah.
What have we been doing? You know, like.
So how did you get involved in RingBen? Because it's kind of an oddball thing to get involved in.
It started with my first dog, which was a pit bull, who ended up biting somebody. And
so then protection sports were just the next
that was
logical
like,
step.
Right from there, I was like, he's born for this. No, it was more like I'm 18, and then I'm terrified that my dog's going to have to be put down.
Okay.
So, and then my brain was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to save this dog. And
did you go to Upstate at that point? Is that when you got involved with Upstate Canine?
No, it was probably a year or two after that. Because I just went head first into training. I realized I was kind of good at it and had that, like, you know, black and white brain. And from there, I worked with some local pet guy who I thought was awesome. But then he showed me how he does all his stuff, and I was like, that is so basic. I feel like there's so much more than that, other than just like yank and crank type training.
There's more than that?
Yeah. So then I saw, from there it was like, oh, the
I'm
top.
learning something today.
The top is like advanced technical protection work, bite sport, dog sport. And that's where it was like, oh, I realized my pit bull is never going to be able to do this type of work.
Yeah.
So I took him as far as I could. But then it was like, okay.
Did you compete with that
I
dog?
need to get, no.
All right.
No.
And then you got Hank.
He wasn't,
And Hank was your first Mal, and that's when you came out and met Scott. And you
Hank
really
was awesome. I love that dog.
Yeah.
Hank was a great dog.
I got lucky with Hank.
Yeah, and you were really into the training aspect of it too. Like I remember you when you would do your obedience, like you'd have him weaving through the legs. Like you really liked the engagement versus just like, oh, I just need to get proper healing for all of that. So Ben really likes all aspects of, you know, where you go with protection, including the agility part of it and the protection part of it and the obedience part of it. How about you? How did you get involved in the crazy thing called Ring?
Oh gosh. So I actually have been in dogs longer than Ben. I started in rescue when I was like in high school, and then I was doing vet tech for the longest time, and then I went into nursing. But it was just like a progression. Like it just made sense. Like I grew up with a German Shepherd. I grew up with a cattle dog mix that I like did all pet dog training stuff, and like basically taught myself how to train. Like I learned about clicker training, and like I was using a prong when I was younger. Like I knew all of the things like before I even knew it was a thing. Like before it was like positive reinforcement stuff like that. But I was just always drawn to protection sports. So I got my first dog, Raiden, the Dutch Shepherd, just because I was like, oh, I like the way they look, you know.
Yeah. I'm working dog strong.
So, you know, and he's a really good dog. He just wasn't the level that I was looking for, because like I wanted to get to Ring 3. I wanted to be a serious competitor. So then I got Narco, and I met Ben shortly after, and then kind of the rest is history. Here I am. How many dogs
Training
later?
took a dip for a while, and then started coming back.
Well, even Ring in general, I feel like has changed a lot in the last decade. Let's talk about that a little bit. And even like since you got involved in Ring, I mean, how long has it been? 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
I guess around 2000.
Yeah, I mean, it's evolved
We're
a
old.
lot.
We're aging ourselves.
Scott's the oldest, so it makes everyone else feel better. But really, like the whole sport itself is challenging from a lot of perspectives. But now I just kind of feel like there's less availability. There's definitely less clubs. Like, have you guys seen a change, at least in the last decade?
I mean, my dog is like almost Ring 3 ready. She has a Ring 1. I'm like, I need a trial for Ring 2, but there's no flipping
place to go.
trials.
Yeah, you
Like,
gotta fly.
And it's like, I don't really have like the time right now to be traveling, across the country. Like I could go out to Arizona to, compete out there, but usually there's like at least a Connecticut trial, and there's been nothing this year, and it's like okay, like
Makes
it's
it
a little
harder.
disheartening because I'm like, what am I working my butt off for if I have no way to like test my training?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you got to travel a lot.
yeah, which isn't always feasible. Like it's worked out well because I get times of like when I was doing travel nursing, I had like times where I wasn't on a contract, so we could go like to Georgia to compete and stuff like that. But realistically, it's not ideal to have to.
Yeah.
Where in France, it's like every weekend I could trial if I wanted to, which
Yeah.
would be beautiful.
Well, you can move to
but
France. There
yeah,
you go. There's
there you
always
go.
that. Yeah. What about you, Ben? What have you seen change, especially within the last decade?
I mean, I think it's been a constant kind of downturn in the interest for dog sports, just because.
You mean
it's like
protection sports?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for sure. Just because it's such a hands-on. I feel like young kids aren't gravitating towards those kind of things.
Yeah.
And the most important thing with bite sports is the decoys.
Yeah.
And we're just getting fewer and fewer decoys, and nobody's doing. I can't say nobody, but for sure, French Ring, we're not doing nearly as much outreach and marketing as we should, as some of the other sports are that are clearly having success from it, like PSA.
That's what I was going to say.
From.
When you were saying that there's been that downturn, I think PSA is, since the beginning, it's really kind of thrived. I don't know what it's like right now, but they had a lot of activity, a lot of trials everywhere, totally different sport, and different rules and all that stuff, but they seem to get a lot of attention and a lot of participation. Yeah. So they're doing something right there. French Ring is very detail-oriented, a lot of rules. It takes a team. It takes a specific field. It takes a lot of components to just train on a regular basis and then get out there and compete. And it's hard because it does take a team. And in France, there's those teams are all
That's all they do.
everywhere, every weekend.
Yeah.
It's a real culture out there.
Yeah.
So it is tough. It's
and
not
it is
easy.
a lifestyle. I guess the thing about French Ring too is it really can't just be a hobby if you're going to be serious about it. Like you kind of have to live, breathe, and eat it. And the Ring 3 program, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a 45-minute program. No leash on the dog. The dog's out there doing protection, jumping, obedience. I mean, it's a long program, way more so than most other disciplines of dogs. It's definitely like the hardest thing to compete in the world as far as I'm concerned.
And also a very specific type of dog that can actually handle it and do it. Because in PSA, you can get bulldogs, you can get, many different types of dogs. All they need to be able to do is bite. And you can compete at the lower level, certainly with any kind of dog, as long as they'll bite.
Yeah.
They may not have the athleticism, they may not have the endurance, but they can do something. They can do a carjacking scenario. People can have fun doing those things. Yeah. But when you get into Ring, I mean, even at the most basic level, you got to come with the high performance.
Completely.
I did, a little brevet with my Border Collie, but he's not cut out for that stuff. But we were able to do that, but that's it. That's just like hey, I'm here, goodbye.
Yeah.
You really, if you're going to do it, you got to have, and if you want to have fun, the other thing is if you're going to go with a dog that is not bred for that type of stuff, it's going to be a lot of work, and you got to really be doing it for the love of working with the specific dog you have, and keep them from getting beat up and treated unfairly and all those kind of things,
Running the show yet again. What do you guys look for in a dog? Is it similar what you look for in like the competition dogs you both work? Do you like a similar kind of dog, or do you have different variations of that, or what does that look like?
I think we both generally look for the same kind of things. For me, it's just innate love for biting. It's that simple. You know, if your dog loves to bite, then you can just kind of mold it, you know, as you're going forward with the program. But you'll just, I mean, you see it really early. It's just, if innately it's really hard to get this dog to engage and just get fully into it. Most of the time, that's an indicator for me where it's like, you know, hey, we're seeing it right now where it's like I have to jump through hoops and kind of run around like a prey animal just to get this dog to engage, you know, bite at all. Yeah. And I see so many people that think that that's what it is, where it's like, okay, the dog's not really engaging. The decoy, you should be doing more. A lot of people say, hey, get more active, where I'm like the opposite. Yeah. I think you see it. You see it very early.
Lazy is the word.
Yeah, but you see it very early in a dog that they either have it or they don't. Yeah. If I just do the bare minimum, they're like really into it. That usually that dog is the one that goes forward. Yeah. But then you'll have these people that will take a dog for way too long and try to force it, when then a year, 2 years down the road, that dog's out because they just didn't.
Well, and some people have the joy of training, which is fine. But if you're looking to be competitive with the whole sport, I would totally agree. So what about like dogs with obedience? Do you like over the top ball drive? Like you like crazy cuckoo stuff, or it doesn't really matter as long as the bite drive's there?
For me personally, as long as the dog bites, I can work with anything else.
Yeah.
So
doesn't matter.
Yeah, like I'm fine. You know,
I can see why you train well together.
Yeah, I mean, like you can build food drives.
As long as there's anger and aggression, we're good.
You know, like, and then that's the thing. I feel like social media too has kind of like painted this picture of what the Malinois is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, you know, like a forwardly social dog, and it should be able to go everywhere and anywhere. Like, I don't care. Like the female I have now,
I've never had one of those.
Like, she's not like want to be your best friend. Like, she loves me to death. Like, the dog would die for me probably, but like, you know, it takes time to warm up. But guess what? She's a great ring dog. So I don't give a shit about anything else. As long as you are a ring dog, that's all that matters to me. And, you know, it's like she's more possessive. She's not the type of dog that, like, you see on social media now where it's like jumping up and punching on you with the toy and like, oh, play with me. No. So it's like, okay, I've learned to work with her drives and play how she wants to play. And like I said, as long as they bite, I can figure out how to work with them. Like, it doesn't matter to me, you know. You can tap into other drives if, you know, withhold food or withhold certain toys. It's not a big deal. It's easy.
No, 100%.
So.
I was going to say about, you know, the type of dogs that you want for ring. And when I first started that club in Mass, when I got out here, I just wanted to get some fresh people into the sport. And they would show up with dogs that weren't suited for ring. And I'm like, that's okay. Bring your Roddy, bring this, bring that. Let's see what we can do with them. And turfs, just dogs that weren't really well suited, but they had drive and they did something. And I'd work my butt off to try and get them into a trial. And I'd say the next dog you get, if you want to do this, get a Mel. Well, we can't have more than one dog in the house, you know. And then inevitably they'd go get another friggin' turf, or they'd go get another Roddy, or they, you know, that was their breed. And it was just, and it's nothing against them. It's just that. Yeah, tremendous amount of work. Well, no, I would get burnt out as a decoy. It's like I'm running around trying to make the dogs look good. I can make them look good on training days, but they really, you know, they weren't excited about working on someone they didn't know, you know, and then they couldn't barely get through a trial. Yeah. And then it was a bummer. It was a lot of work, and I felt like I'm just kind of spinning my wheels.
And it's frustrating if you're the only decoy, and it's like you're working all these dogs trying to, you know, polish turds in some ways. And then you have no one to work your dog. So it's kind of like, it's a thankless job, I think.
Well, that's true. And that's an interesting point, because you guys had a club out in New York, and we had the club in Mass. And I mean, it's thankless. It's a thankless job to have a club. It's a thankless job to be the decoy in the club. Scott would work, 15 dogs and be too tired to work his own dogs at the end of it. Like, it's not easy. So if you guys are out there and you're listening and you do have a club situation, like, make sure you're expressing like profound gratitude at all times, like quick training sessions, like brushing up before a trial. Like, it is not an easy go out there. And since there are fewer and fewer clubs, forming and staying out there and active, it is very, very important to harness and be grateful for what you have. Because you guys don't do any formal club training anymore, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I will say also that when I started the club with Larry Hansen and Adrian out in California, we'd get all kinds of like gangbangers showing up. We'd be working in Compton, and they'd come up with pit bulls, and they'd say, hey, we want to do bite work. And And Larry Hansen would say, fine, we're going to start with obedience. And if they would do the obedience, if they'd come in and do all their obedience, then start doing bite work. See what kind of commitment they had to doing it, because we don't want a bunch of dangerous dogs out there. They're just biting the crap out of people, you know?
Yeah, and let's touch on that, because we talked about it with the quirky tips. So if somebody's listening and they're like thinking like Ben's situation, like, oh, maybe my pit bull should just be biting. What kind of advice would you give people listening that think like, oh yeah, my dog's always been well suited for protection? What would be your kind of oversounding advice?
We're both like,
don't do it.
That's a really difficult question, I think, because when I had a dog boarding daycare business, and like I would get these people that would see the pictures and stuff like that, and they have no concept of how much time and effort goes into
Creating
that thing. So I don't even know how to answer that for like pet people, other than it's just like, okay, yeah, like the obedience thing. And that's what I would do when I would get interested clients. I'd be like, yeah,
Let's go
this
work
is
your
the thing
program.
we do.
Yeah, yeah.
I want you to, you got to go through my obedience program first. We'll teach about engagement, ball, all this stuff. And 9 times out of 10, probably like 10 times, it would be like the 0.001 that would go beyond that.
Yeah.
It would be 2-3 sessions, and I'd never hear from him again.
Yeah.
Because it's seriously, and that's why I think it's the sport is kind of dying, because we're not marketing this super exciting sport. There's so few people that comprehend it and are willing to like put in this enormous amount of dedication and time into that dog.
It's not a woke sport.
No,
So,
it's not.
I mean,
But so yeah, I mean, it's like that'll just get them get into obedience. You know, like you know,
get into training and a training routine. And Scott always says, like, everybody, you know, is like, oh, I need a protection dog. I need a personal protection dog. I need this. And Scott's like, you just need a dog who will bark. I mean, really, for the most part, if you're concerned about, you know, your safety, or, you know, you're a woman who travels alone a lot, like, if you have a good, like, bark and hold, meaning that, like, the dog will just bark at someone that you tell it to bark at, or bark at a gas pump if you point to a gas pump, that's mostly all you need. You just need that intimidation factor. This whole getting dogs to bite and, you know, teaching bite pressure and proper technique and everything else, there's a lot of responsibility owning a dog that can seriously harm someone and injure someone. I mean, we've been doing it for a long time now.
Not for nothing, but like I put all this time and energy into training my dogs. I would never put them in a position to send them on someone.
Yeah.
No.
I would, you know what I'm saying?
I always felt that way.
Like,
It's like, I'd rather go in myself.
yes, yeah. Like,
Keep the dog in the crate so he doesn't get hurt.
like I have weapons to protect myself. I don't need my dog to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I was going to say, that's kind of funny. The people that would approach me, the pet people that said, or they'd call me and say, I need to see if I can get my dog into a police department because he'd be really good at that, but he's just not a good pet. And it's a dog that's got a lot of fear. Yeah. That's biting all the wrong people at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. And they're thinking, well, he should be doing police work. No, you should do some obedience on your dog and get him under control.
I've had similar situations where it's a lack of education. I've had people come to me interested in bite work, and I meet with this person, and it's literally a very fearful dog that has had bites on people,
actual bites,
and they think that, oh, it's bite work. Somehow that will help this dog with biting, not biting, and it's just, you know, education. Like, no, that's not what
it is. Yeah.
Like,
I know. I tell people
it should be fun.
Yeah, the dogs that bite that are police dogs, they're doing it for fun, not because they're upset. No. I mean, it gets more fun after they get blood in their mouth, but in the beginning, it's just a big game, you know.
And it's not them protecting you.
No,
it's they're scared out of their mind. Yeah. And they're trying to
just as happy to bite the cop next to you as you. Like, who do you want me to bite?
All right, let's get back to the lovey-dovey stuff, because I feel like the people out there still doing protection sports, a lot of them are still couples. Like, that is kind of becoming a common dynamic. So I know you guys have evolved a lot over the years. What are do you like have some rules when you're training? Like, how do you approach things? Do you have tips for people that struggle?
I'm sure you never argue or fight.
Never. What are you talking about?
we never don't argue.
It's part of the foundation of the relationship.
And I think that's the same with all couples that train together. That, you know, the nice thing is that you get to know each other, so you don't even have to verbally say what needs to be done, because you know how each other trains. Mm-hmm. And when I trained with Adrian, it was like that. I remember asking Patrice Foucault when he was here, you guys train together? He's like, yeah. I said, you never have any problems? They just fucking drop their heads. Oh my God.
Laughing.
It's like, yeah, everyone has trouble. But the nice thing is knowing the training styles, knowing how each other works, knowing if someone had a bad day and you're just bringing a bad attitude into the session, because you know them so well.
Yeah.
You know, if he didn't get his his artwork done, and now you're dragging him away to do bite work.
I think what's different now is Ben has less of a stake in it because he's not competing. I think maybe that might be part of it.
So you're less like serious about the training?
Well, I don't know. I seem like maybe it's just because you're less neurotic. You've kind of like taken it down a few notches. But honestly, like now it's kind of like I go out there and I'm kind of like dictating what we're gonna do, how it's gonna go, and he's just like, okay. Like obviously, like
It's your dog.
It's my dog, yeah. And I have like a plan. So like the other day, I was like, Ben, we need to start doing ball searches with Doja. I really think I saw XYZ with this, and I think she needs it. And he's like, okay, and like
we just do it.
We just do it, yeah.
So you're just acquiescing a lot more, and it's going much better.
Well, there's less ego involved.
I don't know if it's that. I just we've been together a long time and done training for a while. For me, it's kind of been like a informal therapy where we love each other, obviously, and we wanted to get good at this together. And we both did kind of what it took to figure out how to communicate and how to work together and not be at each other's throats. We learned how to compliment each other. So it's like a motivation to want to do this with another person and not just like doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
having your own ego kind of take over.
Yeah, we had a big fight. Like, what is going on? Why am I triggering you? Why are you triggering me? It was like growth as people. That was the biggest thing for me.
And it normally reaches outside of the training field. Lo and behold.
Oh,
Yeah, so like now after every training session, I'm like, thank you, like, like you did a good job, or like, I see a change, like obviously giving him.
She's rolling her eyes. Yeah, you did a great job.
No, like, giving him props to like, I can really see a change in this, or like, this is really coming along. Like, thank you for your help and stuff like that. It's just like being like, even if he's like really like annoyed me in some way in that session, I still try to be positive and
intentionally
give gratitude.
That's more than you get as a club decoy.
Because I know I could be very annoying. Like, that's part of my personality when it comes to like stuff I take seriously.
Yeah.
People used to say to me, "What's wrong with Ben?" I say, "What are you talking about?" Like, to me, he's totally normal.
Yeah.
Especially with a significant other, it's so easy to just quickly lose that filter.
Yeah.
And you're just like, "Bleh."
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think Scott brought up too, and this was a good one. Like, if you're having a shit day, maybe don't train that day. Like, if something's going on in your life, like, there's no need to, unless you're like trialing that weekend, but there's no reason to force a training session when the energy's already a little bit off. I think Ryan and Alex up in Canada, they said one time, like, they have a safe word when they're training. I thought that was so funny. They're like, if things are getting out of hand, like, we say this word and then training's over. But you have to have mutual respect. I love this, like, infusing compliments and making that happen. And you really do have to just be grateful, because especially as the world gets smaller and smaller, whatever you have, and you have excellence at your disposal. I mean, you're lucky in the sense for training with that, because you are still doing trials. You are still a trial decoy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're
Just
getting
did
great
one
technique.
Up in Canada.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Nice.
So
if we were doing that, I'd need postcards. Okay. Thank you. Wait, go to my next postcard. You did a good job.
we did pretty well with training. I would say our training, kind of like how you guys are talking, I would be like, okay, you're going to do this. Not with the decoy stuff, but especially like if Scott was doing his obedience, a part of it is just he wasn't as OCD as me, and he wasn't like remembering what happened the last session as much. But I'd be like, do this, do this, do this. As long as it looked good, he was happy. We moved on. But for the most part, we didn't have extreme conflict in training. But we deal with each other more than any two people should ever deal with.
No, but
anyone.
it did. You definitely complimented what I was doing, because you're more anal than me, for sure. Yeah. And I go out and have fun and not as thoughtful. And the thing was, I was able to get away with that for a long time. I could go out and compete, pass, do well sometimes, but inconsistent, because I'm not super anal and really there's people that keep logs. I mean, they're just writing down everything they do all the time. Yeah. And those are the people that do well. And I tell my pet clients this all the time. I said, I used to do obedience, I used to do protection work and compete. I did okay. I'm not super anal. And you can see the difference in personality between someone that does okay in a club trial, someone that consistently does well on a national level, and someone that does well internationally. They're three different people.
Yeah.
And those people will always wind up at doing best at nationals, and they'll always be at the international event placing in the top 5.
Yeah, not just
because
a one-off with the
that's
dog.
who they are, and that's what they demand of themselves, and they know what it takes. And for me, it's like, I don't really have the desire. I enjoy dogs. I enjoy bite work. I love to get involved. I like the learning. I remember when I first got involved, I would just walk along with the decoy or walk along, if they'd let me. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? How's that working? Why, and seeing things that didn't make sense. Why are you doing it that way? But then when it came down to the competition, the handling and all the rules, just not something I'm thrilled about. I learn them because I don't want to cost my dog points.
Yeah.
But it's like,
It's not Scott's
so
personality.
Much, and when you get into ring 3, I mean, there's a ton of, and the
many
thing
points
is,
to lose.
when you know all the rules, you can actually argue with the judge. Sometimes the judges don't know what, like
I
they're
study
saying
the rule
shit.
book before I trial.
Right, so
I
you
have
can
it all
say, hey.
printed out. I read it. I have it like laminated.
I've seen people at a high level that will challenge the judge and get points back quite often.
Yeah.
And that's why I say Ben kind of groomed me, because it was a hobby first. It was like,
That
having
sounds so-
fun with
that
my
sounds
dog.
weird. I mean, we
I
just
know.
saw-
I know.
Don't start. Don't start. Don't start.
But like
Keep it on.
his attention to detail has rubbed off on me to where
Yeah.
it's like I do keep a training journal, and now like it's not just a hobby, because like I'm constantly thinking about it. I'm constantly thinking, okay, like what can I do the next session? What can I change? What can I'm at work, and I'm texting Ben. I'm like, can you just go do positions quick with Doja, because I think she needs X, Y, Z, and can you work on her retrieve for me? And like that's the nice thing too, is like he'll actually just go out and do it for me.
Yeah.
So
And do it the way you want it done.
yes,
That's the
yeah.
nice
Well,
thing.
he'll do it better, because there's some things that I think he's better at. Like I think.
But that's why you want him to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he's really good at tapping into like possession with the retrieves and their drives, which I like. I think because he's a decoy, he's got that extra finesse, and like I'm just not there yet. So it's like, hey, can you help with the hold and that stuff? And he did that, and the precision of the positions were still.
What's
working on,
interesting
but-
about French ring and everything you're talking about is that French ring is like the only one compared to Schutzen or IPO, whatever the hell they call it now.
IGP.
IGP.
Yeah.
Just
where
look at the alphabet and pick 3 letters.
It's not unusual for people to buy a finished dog, go out and compete with it, and it's totally legitimate, and everyone's like, yeah, they're great team, but they didn't train the dog.
I could never.
In French ring, it's very rare that someone goes and buys a ring 3 dog and then comes here and just starts winning at the nationals all the time, because it just doesn't seem right. It's like, no, you want to build your own dog. It's you as a team, you came together and you grew, you know what I mean?
Or like the few people I know who've purchased Ring 3 dogs from France, like don't know what the heck. Like they're
They don't have the rules
completely
down.
new to
Right.
Yeah.
French ring, and they're not out there competing. So
I mean,
like-
it's good to go out and handle. If you want to learn your
yeah,
handling, it's great to
for
have a
sure.
finished dog to handle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that
it's
is
not
true.
as
In this
accepted.
country, it's more
not as
start to
accepted.
finish with the
Yeah.
dog. That's true. And a lot of like homebred dogs now, like homegrown dogs, like people making their own puppies and everything else. So you guys don't have as much overlap in your life. So training is kind of like this recreational thing you do together. Do you do other fun things together? Do you have other hobbies? Like, do you like go out for drinks
let's
after
talk
training?
About,
Like,
let's
what
talk
do you
about
really do?
mushrooms now. Okay. Transition to hallucinogenics.
Last tab.
festivals.
No, really though. I just want to make this point, because a lot of people, it's like, oh, this is our recreation, this is our hobby. But like, do you have like other things infused into your lives?
because at the end of the day, French ring isn't really recreational
Yeah,
for us.
yeah,
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. And it's kind of work at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Especially for Ben.
It's and honestly, like I'm kind of keeps like having one foot out the door with it, because it's getting kind of
Harry. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about this like last week.
yeah, like literally a few days ago. I'm like, the buck might stop with Doja. I might get her to ring 3 and be done, because it's just like. It's disheartening, because I'm working my butt off, and I don't do it for the trials. I like building dogs and bite work, and I like to test my training. That's the only reason why I'm still in it. But it's like I said, I think
Just
about it
getting
all the
harder and
time.
harder to access,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like we do. I mean, honestly, Ben and I do like pretty much everything together. We're kind of like one and the same person.
We're the same
So,
way.
like we've done paddleboarding, we've done kayaking, we were just at a concert over
Yeah.
the weekend.
So you have a lot of good variation. I just think
Yeah.
it's important to the people that, Scott and I obviously have the same career too. We podcast together. We do a lot of togetherness. If you have 2 separate careers and then the only time you're meeting up for recreation is training, maybe throw some more things into the mix, because training isn't always necessarily the most fulfilling or...
It can be volatile.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
can
like,
be.
I envy the people who just go out there and are like weekend warriors, like, oh, just doing fun bites with my dog. And like, I kind of wish that was me, but I just,
Too obsessive.
too obsessive.
Ben
Yeah.
fixed you.
And one of the reasons I stopped competing along the same lines is because the sport like kind of stopped supporting the lifestyle. Like it became a lifestyle, but like NARA, I don't think is doing enough where the sport isn't supporting the lifestyle anymore. It's just like, how can we do this, put all this effort, and then literally have to travel like 14 hours to do a trial.
Yeah, or even just
they're
for
every
decoys
couple
and
months.
judges. I mean, outside of competitors, like there's a lot of support that's needed, and I think that is something that's different in French ring versus some other protection sports for sure.
And I'm lucky because I'm not paying, a decoy to work my dog.
Yeah.
But then it's
That's
like
a good point,
I've
yeah.
washed 2 puppies already, so like there's money going into getting dogs to do it, and it's like, I don't know.
But even that's another good point you bring up. Like if you guys, especially even some clubs situations, like there's going to be money. Like you're forking out money for this. Like this is a pretty like high dollar thing outside of competing and everything else. So yeah, that is true. At least with Ben, you're not spending money on just the decoy stuff, but you're going to be dropping some money. It's not a cheap sport.
Yeah, and you talk about washing out puppies. I mean, that's the mindset there. That's a huge turn off of the pet dog owner. Where people get a dog and they want to do the best they can with this dog, and they're never going to get rid of this dog. And I mean, owning a dog, it's a minimum 12-year commitment. Hopefully, it's longer. And when I first got involved in this, I washed out a lot of puppies. I was advised to wash them out from the decoys I was working with, and a lot of them weren't that bad. But I didn't know what I was looking at either. You're at a point where you know exactly what you want.
And I know what I like.
And this, and the nice thing about the puppies, when that time came that I decided to find a home for this puppy, I was always able to find homes because I didn't try to sell them and recoup some kind of money. I just want to make sure the dog went to a safe place where they could be taken care of.
Yeah.
And quite often I paid a lot of money for the dog.
Yeah.
It was a good dog. It just wasn't what I wanted. And if I could find a home where they're like, I remember going to a Schutzhund club and I had 2 dogs because I was at a point where I was like, I'm just going to get 2 puppies and the best one I'll keep. And the other one was good. And this other guy comes to me and goes, I love that puppy. And I go, you want him? He's like, yeah, why? I said, because I got 2 good ones and I like the other one better. And he was thrilled. And I just handed, and there was a German judge there. And he just goes, that's great. He goes, I tell everybody, you can't train 2 dogs at the same time. You train 1 dog at a time. And that's where I was at. I didn't have the time or the desire to train 2 dogs at the same time. And it's a lot of work.
I joke. I'm like, if you're friends with me long enough, you're going to get a dog from me because I have a friend who's had 2 dogs from me already.
Yeah.
So,
How are you guys with your sport dogs as far as like pet doggy stuff? Like, are they like house dogs and stuff too, or how do you feel about all that?
So that's the thing for me. They have to be both. Okay. Yeah. Like I don't like my dogs being in a kennel. So like they don't have to be perfect house dogs because that's not what I expect of them. But like they have to. And I don't care if they're social, but they have to be neutral with my other dogs because I have my little dogs. They have to be good with them. They have to be manageable with my cat. And that's really all I ask for, Like
they
the rest
they don't need to interact with company that's coming over.
Nope. They put them. No.
That's the thing people don't realize.
We don't even.
I don't even want to interact with them. A company.
That's where I was going.
I'm like going
But I mean, like I still have Cousteau, he's 9 now.
Yeah.
He acts like he's 3 or 4.
Snarko.
He's full of
Yeah.
energy. Yeah. He's good with other dogs, but he's intense. And he needs something to do, basically. He's not just a couch potato. And I would never have him out around company or anything like that because he's like a magnet. People want to go to him. But he's not super social with people. He would look at people like, what the fuck are you doing, buddy? You're a little too close to me.
That's my dog now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And you do kind of have to be an advocate for your dog. And I love this discussion of like, let the dogs be who they want to be and support them. But there are some hard lines there. Like you can't be neurotic. You have to respect little dogs and cats and everything else. All right. Are we missing anything as far as training, love lives, mushrooms? Did we miss any big topics? No, psychedelics for all. We're very pro psychedelic.
In closing, for pet dog owners, the way we're talking about our dogs that aren't necessarily social with the public, there's no need to force to try to make them social. Because a lot of pet dogs I see, they're the same way. They're great dogs. They're just they're not real social with kids, or they're not social. So what?
Yeah.
They don't have to have these kids hanging off their ears.
No.
Yeah. That's what's so nice about getting a dog comfortable in a crate. If you have a sister or brother coming over with their little monsters, throw your dog in a crate for everybody's well-being.
Yeah, no, it's true.
You know?
Be an advocate for your dog and let them be who they're going to be as long as they're not harming others.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think people kind of are shocked too because they think like, oh, like Ben and Janelle, like they're serious about the dog trainers, and it's like we let our dogs do so much and get away with so much.
Oh yeah,
they respect us, and it's like if I tell them to cut the shit, they cut the shit.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like I like them being who they want to be. If you want to be crazy, be crazy. Yeah. Like
Scott lets his dogs be a little too free.
I say the same thing to my clients. I said, everything you want me to teach your dog, my dog doesn't do any of that shit. My dog, I mean, I'm happy to show you how to stop counter surfing. But I'll tell you, my dog will counter surf if I let him. I'm not going to go kick his ass. I'm not going to put an e-collar on him at 100 to stop that behavior. I manage him so it doesn't happen, so he doesn't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of working with like pet dog clients was like unbrainwashing them from what the mainstream thinks pet dogs should be.
Right.
It's become, the pet industry is going in such like a radical direction.
You think so?
A little bit. Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? What do you think that they're promoting should be a pet
I mean,
dog?
you're not using
Just
any corrections
social,
in your training, are you?
just social, just, what do you mean? What do you think the
Yeah, I mean,
mainstream?
it's stuff like that where
They should just be happy-go-lucky,
there's
confident
this-
in every situation.
yeah, this idea that dogs should get along with every single other dog, they should get along with every single
Yeah.
person. They don't comprehend that the dogs do not care.
Yeah.
They would totally live a happy, fulfilled life if they just got to hang out with you and you did
Yeah.
stuff with them.
And being social is just being neutral
And,
also.
and the dog they're complaining about, this is their third home. It's a
Yeah.
rescue that's already bit
Yeah.
this person and that person, but they want the dog to be something other than he
A
is.
robot.
Let the dog be who he is and enjoy the good, manage the stuff you don't like.
No,
I mean,
it's
that's
true.
what we do with our dogs,
It's
too.
true. Yeah.
My dogs are damn near perfect. but-
Management for
Mine
the win.
too.
All right, I think we covered everything. We got love, we got psychedelics, we got training, we got pet dog topics. Again, if you think you have a dog that might be great in bite sports, please contact the proper people. And really, at the end of the day, just get your dog to bark. You don't need your dog biting people or biting equipment or anything else. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to have a day all together. I'm excited. We're going to put the dogs in the car and head up to Maine on like the warmest day of the year. I made a cobbler too, so I'm very excited about that.
We haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't be promoting that. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Check out Ben and Janelle's Instagram links. They are in the description of this episode. And in the meantime, keep it quirky. Bye, guys.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.